Somewhere around age 3 or 4, your life story just starts. Not because that's when things started happening to you. Before that line, there are thousands of days you actually lived through. You had a favorite person, you had a specific fear, something made you laugh so hard you couldn't breathe. All of it happened, and all of it is now unreachable. Ask yourself to picture being 2 years old, and there isn't even a blur to work with, just nothing, which is strange because those were arguably the years doing the most work on who you'd become. The usual explanation is that babies just don't remember because there's nothing yet to remember. The brain is unformatted, a blank drive still warming up. It's a tidy story and it matches your own experience perfectly since you have zero footage to argue with. Except the moment researchers actually test infants, that story collapses. Show a 2 month old that kicking their leg makes a mobile spin above their crib. Take the mobile away, bring the same baby back into that room days later, and their leg starts kicking before anything is even hanging there. Play a 6 month old a stream of nonsense syllables, and within minutes, their brain has quietly worked out which sounds tend to follow which, splitting the noise into word shaped chunks, the exact skill that later lets them start actually talking. None of that is possible without memory. A baby that remembers nothing shouldn't be able to do any of it. So the puzzle isn't whether the recording happened. It clearly did. The puzzle is where all of it went. To answer that, you have to give up the idea that memory is one thing. It isn't a single camera running in your skull. It's several separate systems, built on different timelines, doing different jobs. When an infant learns to grip a spoon, or flinches at a loud noise, or slowly builds a sense that crying gets a response, that's implicit memory. The part of the brain that stores skills and emotional reflexes without ever generating a scene you could describe. You don't remember learning to swallow, you just can. What's missing in early childhood is a different system entirely: autobiographical memory, the kind that comes with a you in it, standing in a particular room, on a particular day. Building that kind of memory requires the hippocampus, a structure that acts less like a camera and more like a filing clerk, binding sound and sight and feeling into one retrievable, dated event. And in a young child, that clerk hasn't finished being built. There's a strange proof of this hiding in international adoption records. Children adopted as infants, raised entirely in a new language, with zero conscious memory of the language spoken around them in their first months, will still relearn the sounds of that original language faster than a total stranger would, years later, as adults. They can't tell you a single word of it. They'd swear they never heard it. But some part of their brain clearly did, and kept the blueprint. That's implicit memory operating completely outside the reach of anything you'd call remembering. It doesn't ask permission from the part of you that tells stories about your life. It just keeps working, quietly, underneath it. Here's the part that flips the whole thing on its head. For a long time, scientists assumed infant amnesia happened because the brain wasn't doing enough yet. The newer, stranger theory is closer to the opposite. The brain may be forgetting because it's learning too fast. During early childhood, the hippocampus is manufacturing new neurons and wiring them in at a blistering pace, a process called neurogenesis. Some researchers think this constant construction work disrupts the very connections that would otherwise have held onto those early memories, the way renovating a filing room while someone's mid sentence tends to scatter the paperwork. Other researchers think the problem is more about access than storage, that the language and sense of self needed to tag a memory as mine back then simply aren't online yet. Nobody has fully settled the argument. What almost everyone agrees on is the outcome. The machine for building a searchable past comes online gradually, and until it does, experience doesn't get erased so much as filed somewhere you'll never learn to open. Which raises the more uncomfortable question. If you can't retrieve any of it, did those years actually shape you, or are they just gone? This is where implicit memory stops being a footnote and becomes the whole story. An infant who is picked up quickly every time they cry won't remember a single one of those moments. There's no scene to recall, But the pattern gets built into them anyway, as a working assumption about what the world does when you're in distress. Attachment researchers have traced that assumption forward for decades and found it quietly steering how people handle closeness, conflict, and trust as adults, long after the original moments are unrecoverable. Early neglect or chronic stress leaves marks the same way, shaping how reactive the brain's threat systems stay for years afterward. Someone can carry a persistent edge of anxiety their whole life, search their memory for a cause, and find only blank space, while the actual cause sits fully intact, just not as a memory, as a setting. That's really the whole discovery once you strip away the mystery framing. Nothing about your first years vanished. It just never arrived in a format you could revisit. It arrived as you, which means the sense that you are made of your memories has it slightly backwards. The moments you can replay are a small, late addition to something that was already under construction. The earliest, arguably heaviest chapters of your life were written by a version of you with no language, no sense of time, and no ability to file any of it away as a story. And they're still running. Every time you flinch at something you can't explain, or feel instantly at ease with a stranger for no visible reason, that's not a mood. That's likely an old file, opened without a label. So the fog at the start of your memory isn't a design flaw, and it isn't really a loss either. It's what construction looks like from the inside, before the scaffolding comes down and the building just starts standing there, finished, with no memory of being built. Maybe that's a better definition of who you actually are. Not the story you can tell about yourself, the parts running underneath it that you never got the chance to write down.